Okay, two things today, slope and slope-intercept form. So if you look here, this should all look familiar to find slope. We've done this before. But the big thing that I've noticed today is make sure the difference of y's is on top and the difference of x's is on bottom. That's really important. You can't switch that. You can't have x's on top, y's on the bottom. It has to be y's on top. So what I like to do is label my first point, x1, y1. Label my second point, y2, y2, because it's my second point. And then I can just go up to this formula and follow it. y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. If I'm subtracting in a negative, what do? Add opposite. Very good. So this would be actually plus 3, which is 4. And this one's actually going to be plus 4, 7 plus 4, which is 11. Can't reduce that, so I'm done. That's my slope, 4/11ths. So let's do this one again. I'm going to label. This is my x1, y1, x2, y2. So following my formula, y2 minus y1, x2 minus x1. And again, I have a double negative, so we'll add opposite. Negative 3 plus 1 is negative 2. 8 plus 2 is 10. But if I can reduce my slope, my fraction, I do that. 2/10 will reduce into negative 1/5. Very good. Okay, so always reduce if possible. One more. Okay, so again, x1, y1, x2, y2, 3 minus 2, y2 minus y1 over 2 minus 1, which would be 1 over 1, which is 1. My slope is 1. Okay, so that's finding slope. That should be very familiar to you, hopefully, right? It should be a little bit boring today. This should all be familiar. But we're going to go over everything just in case somebody's missing something, okay? 3 types of slopes then you can have with lines. Positive slopes always go uphill. Negative slopes always go downhill. So did I graph it right? We'll look at your slope. Is the slope matching your equation? The other 2 important things are these. If my slope is 0, meaning m is 0, that is a horizontal line. Do you remember which is a horizontal line? X equals or y equals? Remember? It's a y equals. Horizontal lines is a y equals some number, right? Y equals, in this case, y equals 2. That's what that would be. The only way I can figure out for kids to remember that is if you flip a y upside down, what letter does it make? And kind of a weird looking H for horizontal? No? You don't see the H?
That's where you're wrong.
You don't see the H?
I see an upside down Y.
An upside down. Well, that's all I got. So, huh?
The Y actually has a value.
Right. Y is always 2 no matter what X is. So when a slope is undefined, meaning I have 0 on the bottom, you can never have 0 on the bottom of a fraction. That's undefined. And then this would be an x equals. Vertical lines are x equal. Okay, so slope-intercept form, if you remember, is mx plus b, right? Y equals mx plus b. The m is the slope. The b is the y-intercept. When I graph slope-intercept form, which one's first? The y-intercept or the slope? Y-intercept. When you graph a line, you always do the y-intercept first, then the slope. Okay? So let's write some equations. Y equals, what's my slope? 3. So put that in for m. What's my y-intercept? 2. So the equation for this would be y equals 3x plus 2. The The next one, my slope is 5, 6. My y-intercept is 12. So y equals 5, 6, x plus 12. Right? Just put slope for slope, y-intercept for y-intercept. This one would be what? My slope is 0, and my y-intercept's -2. What kind of line is that? Horizontal or vertical? Horizontal lines have a slope of 0. So even if you did put the 0 in for x, that's okay, because you're going to notice 0 times anything is 0, so y equals -2. You'll still get the right answer. And then you can also look at a graph and write it. So slope-intercept form, how would I find a slope here? What do I need to find a slope? Rise over run, which means you need 2 points. Any 2 points, maybe like -3, -1, and 0, -2. Those are nice, distinct points. So rise over run, I'm going down 1, right 3. When you go down, that's negative. Down 1, but right 3 is positive. So it would be -1/3. And then I need the y-intercept, which is on the y-axis. The y-intercept would be -2. There's my equation. So slope and y-intercept, those are the two main things you need to get slope-intercept form. Okay, so the last part that I want to do today is if I give you standard form of an equation, and this is what standard form looks like, where you have the x and the y on the same side, put this standard form into slope-intercept form, identify what the slope and y-intercept are, and then graph it. Those three things, slope-intercept form, identify m and b, and then graph it. So I have 2 steps for you, because standard form into slope-intercept form 99.67% of the time follows these 2 steps. Step 1, you move the x term. That's step 1. Whenever you have standard form, not all the time, most of the time, the first thing is going to be move the x term to the other side, and then divide by the number in front of y. So almost all the time, those are the 2 steps that you're going to follow. You're going to move the x term over, divide everything by the number in front of y. Almost always.
What the?
Okay, so my first step here, okay, my first step is what? Move the x term. How do I take this 8x and move it over? I'm going to subtract it. Very good, because it's positive. So subtract the 8x. Can I take 5 minus 8x? No, they're not like terms, so don't do that. Leave it. And then the number in front of y is a 6. So I'm going to divide every single term by 6. You're going to get some fractions, that's okay. That's going to cancel out, so y equals 5, 6 minus, reduce that, 8, 6 reduces, 4/3 x. So then I can say my b is 5, 6. My m is -4/3. That's the 2 things I need to graph. Which one's first, the b or the m? The b, always the b, always the y-intercept first. So how in the world do I graph 5, 6? We know 6, 6 is 1, so 5, 6 is going to be just short of 1, right? 6, 6 is 1, so 5, 6 is just going to be right below the 1. And then from that point, I do the slope. And this means down 4, because it's negative, right 3, because it's positive. So down 4, right 3. And remember, if you go down and to the right, you can reverse it and go up and to the left. Remember that? you can always reverse a slope. So instead of down 4, right 3, I can go up 4, left 3, and get another point that way. And then I have my line. Okay, try another one. Okay. So again, get it in slope-intercept form. What am I going to do first? Move the x term. And then divide by the number in front of y, which is a -2, so I divide everything by a -2. Okay. Now I have y by itself. This is going to be -5. 9/2, that's going to become positive because 2 negatives make positive. And I would leave it 9/2. I wouldn't do 4.5 because that's my slope, and you want slope as a fraction because rise over run. So my b is -5. My m is 9/2. So graph it. Which one first? The b, the y-intercept. Go down 5. And then it's both positive, so I'm going to go up 9, right 2. Whoops. My line is not very straight, but it doesn't have to be perfect. We're just doing our best here. I don't expect you to get rulers out. It's fine. I'm more concerned with this, right? The graph would be really the last thing I would look at. Come quiz and test time, if you had all of this information correct and the graph was somewhat right, it's fine. Because human error, right? The next one's a good one. Y equals 7. What kind of line is that? Horizontal. Very good. So my slope is what? 0. Very good. Horizontal line slope is 0. My y-intercept would be 7, because that's where my line is. I'm going to go up 7 and make a horizontal line there. Okay. So not bad. It does get a little bit trickier now that you're in Algebra 2. So they take these Algebra 1 standards and kind of raise the bar a little bit and say, okay, now try this. Make it a little bit harder, give you some fractions, some decimals. So if you look at the next example, let's see.
Holy cow, how many problems do you have?
It looks like a lot, but it won't, you should get done.
Quality,
Okay,
not
so again,
quantity.
I'm going to follow the same steps. What are they? Move the x term. So I'm going to subtract 2/3 x. So y divided by 3. Okay, now this is one of that 0.4% that happens where I'm not dividing by the number in front of y. What am I going to do? If I'm taking y divided by 3, what? Very good. This is y divided by 3. So in this case, I'm going to multiply by 3, the opposite. Okay? It's most of the time those 2 steps, but there's scenarios like this where it doesn't work. So if I multiply by 3, everything gets multiplied by 3. And what you should recognize, if I have 3 on top and bottom, it cancels out. So look at here, 3 top and bottom, it cancels out. 3 top and bottom, it's going to cancel out. So this confusing looking linear equation just got way simple. Because now look, y equals -1 minus 2x. That's way better than what it was before. That's something I can graph. My b is -1. My slope is a -2 over 1. You can make anything into a fraction by putting it over 1. So what am I going to do? I'm going to go down 1 and then down to right 1, because negative means down. Down to right 1, or I can reverse it up to left 1. X equals 5, is that vertical or horizontal? Vertical, but the slope, very good. What's the slope? Undefined, very good. Whenever you have a vertical line, your slope is undefined. What's my y-intercept? If I have a vertical line at 5, oops, what's going to be my y-intercept? Where does it cross the y-axis? It doesn't. So what's my y-intercept? You don't have one. And that'll happen, right? On those vertical lines. You're not going to have a y-intercept. You just have basically no slope or y-intercept. You just have a vertical line. And the last one, just some decimals, but you have calculators you can use. Right? I don't expect you to be able to do that in your head. This one's a little bit backwards. You should notice that my coefficients on the left side and my variables are now on the right side. But to get y by itself, you're still following those two same steps. You're going to add the x term. And then divide by the number in front of y. Okay, and this is where you're going to need a calculator. Okay, and that's okay. You can use a calculator. So what's 2.4 divided by 0.4? And that actually comes out, yeah, it comes out even, -6, good. What's, right, 36 divided by 4 is basically what you're doing. 3.6 divided by 0.4? So that looks a lot better from what I started with. Decimals, yuck, right? Nice whole numbers, good. Graph that. I know my b is -6. My m is -9 over 1. You can change anything into a fraction. Put it over 1. So I'm going to go down 6. There we go. Down 6. Down 9 over 1, but I'm going to run out of room. So you can reverse it. You can go up 9, left 1. Right? Up and left is opposite, then down and to the right. So your homework would be to finish, right, find the slope, those 6, finding the slope. And then I gave you just a couple of easy ones, slope-intercept form. And then I gave you 9, put it in slope-intercept form, identify slope and y-intercept, and graph.